Hey, welcome back. Dave Dubeau here, and today we're going to be talking about how to invest in real estate without actually buying the property yourself. So if you're somebody that's interested in being involved in real estate investing, but you don't want the responsibility or the liability necessarily of actually owning the property, we're going to share 7 different ways for you to do a real estate deal without actually buying the property yourself. Stay tuned. All right, one of the ways I've seen lots of people be involved in real estate investing without actually buying a property, and it's very popular these days, is something called Airbnb arbitrage. Airbnb arbitrage. Now, what does that mean? Well, you know what Airbnb is? It's short-term rentals, it's furnished rentals that people are typically renting by, the night or by the week, and people typically get a much higher cash flow in those kind of properties versus the same property rented out long-term as an unfurnished rental. So how do you do this without actually owning the property? Well, a lot of people, what they do is they find a property owner who just wants a really good, low maintenance, long-term tenant. And they approach that person and they say, okay, Mr. Property Owner, here's what I'll do. I will lease your property off you by the year. So it won't be a month-to-month thing. I will commit to at least a year at a time. I'll lease the property. I'll take care of all of the maintenance, all of the upkeep, the day-to-day stuff with this property, and pay you a good rental for it. In exchange, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to furnish this property very, very nicely, and I'm going to rent it out on Airbnb by the night or by the week. I'm going to turn it into a short-term rental. So the owner knows this up front. And then that person, all they have to come up with, they don't have to come up with the money to buy the property. All they have to do is furnish it and put it up on Airbnb, Vrbo, etc., and get these short-term tenants, these guests in the property. And then the difference between what they pay the owner and what they're receiving from their guests is their profit. This is Airbnb arbitrage. So again, this is a great way to control the property without necessarily needing to own it and get many of the benefits of real estate without the ownership. Now, the downside is you don't get any property appreciation on that property. You don't get to benefit from the mortgage pay down on that property. All you're doing is getting the difference in the cash flow. So it limits the different profit centers you can enjoy from the property. Another option is kind of similar but different, and it's kind of a rent to own strategy, and it's called lease options. I've got experience with this myself back in the day. I did a number of these when I was doing my 18 deals in 18 months. And the way this works is same idea as with a Airbnb arbitrage, but in this case, we're leasing the property from the owner with an option to purchase it at a specific price and within a specific time frame, and we also have the right to sublet the property. So typically the way this works is what's called a sandwich leased rent to own deal. So I find the property owner, I strike up this deal with them. Hey, Mr. Property Owner, you don't have to worry about tenants and toilets. You don't have to worry about any of the maintenance on this property. I'll take care of all of that. Just give me a good rate on the rental, and then I'm going to go find somebody who's going to rent it from me at a higher price. I'm also going to agree to pay you a certain price at the end of 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever the time frame is, and I'm going to get them to pay me a higher price. So the difference between what they're paying me for rent and what I'm paying you is part of my profit. The difference between what I'm paying you at the end and what they're paying me at the end is part of my profit as well. So everybody goes into this with their eyes wide open. So again, lease options are another way to do things, sandwich lease deals. And I guess now that I'm thinking about it, you could actually do this kind of thing with that Airbnb arbitrage and buy it at the end of the deal if you wanted to. So there's another option for you there as well. The third way to control a property without actually having to buy it yourself is by doing a subject to deal. What does that mean? That means that you buy a property from a seller and they keep the initial financing on the property. What does that mean? So let's say, for example, you come across a property where the owner hasn't owned it for very long. They've got a mortgage on this property, but they have to move out of town right away and they can't afford to sell the property. Why wouldn't they be able to sell the property? Well, perhaps the market's gone down and today's price is less than what they paid for it a few years ago, and they don't have any equity in the property. Perhaps if they had to sell the property, they'd actually have to come out of pocket to pay the realtors, and they can't do that. So they're motivated to move. They don't want to go into foreclosure and have that on their credit rating, but they're looking for a solution. So in this case, you could take over the property, you could take ownership of the property, but the mortgage stays in their name. Okay, now why would they do that? Well, again, it's a way for them to avoid going into foreclosure, and it's a way for you to own and control the property with the mortgage already in place. Now, depending on when you're watching this, this could be a big, big advantage because a couple of years ago, mortgage rates were crazy, crazy low. You could get a mortgage for 1 to 2% a year. These days, as we're filming this, now it's up to 5, 6, 7%. So if you're able to get in on their mortgage that they set in on the property years ago, you're doing yourself a huge favor for cash flow. So that is a synopsis of a subject to deal. You do end up controlling, perhaps even owning the property without having to buy it. The fourth method I want to share with you today is seller financing. So this is a way for you to own a property without necessarily having to buy it traditionally. How does this look? So let's say you find a seller who owns the property 100% free and clear. They don't have any mortgage on it. They don't have any HELOC on it. They don't have any encumbrances on the property. It's free and clear. And statistics say that about 30% of all of the properties are free and clear. So if you find a seller like that who is looking for cash flow, they're looking to get their money out of the deal little by little instead of all at one time, perhaps you can structure something as attractive as 100% seller financing on that property. That way you can get into the deal with perhaps just coming up with the money for the legalities for setting up the mortgage on the property, but you don't have to come up with the money for the down payment. Now, is that going to happen very often? No, but it can happen sometimes depending on the seller and the relationship that you have with them. So seller financing could be another way for you to get into properties without having to buy them traditionally. A fifth way of getting into real estate investing without actually having to buy properties is very, very popular these days, and it's called wholesaling. What does wholesaling mean? Wholesaling means that you go out and you find a property and you negotiate a really good deal with the property seller, and then instead of closing on the property and buying it yourself, you sell the deal to another real estate investor. So this is really, really common in the flipping space, where you've got some guys and gals who are out there actively flipping properties. They're buying them, fixing them up, selling them, but they don't have the time and the energy to go find the properties. So then you get a wholesaler that goes out and finds the properties, negotiates a heck of a deal on it, and then sells the deal to the flipper for $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, depending on how much equity is in that property, how much profit's going to be left over for the flipper, and that's the way that they do their real estate investing business. So the big benefit there is zero money required for you as the wholesaler. Maybe a few bucks to tie up the deal and make it legal, but you don't have to be coming up with down payments, and you don't have to close on the property. You're selling the deal to another active real estate investor. Another way to invest in real estate without actually buying the property yourself or coming up with the money for the down payments is to work with a hard money lender. So why would a hard money lender loan you all of the money for a property? They usually won't unless you get a super duper smoking deal on the property. So I've seen this quite a few times with our clients who are flippers. If they go in and they're able to buy a property for literally 20, 30, 40 cents on the dollar, and there's so much equity left in that property, they can, in that sense, get the hard money lender to loan them 100% of the purchase price of the property plus 100% of the renovation costs, because the hard money lender knows that should that investor renege on the deal, they can go take over the property and liquidate it and get their cash back out quick and easy. So they can do that in that circumstances, but it's very, very difficult to make that happen. Those are deals that come along that are few and far between, because you have to get such an absolutely smoking deal on the property that it makes sense for both you and the hard money lender. And last but not least, our seventh way for you to be able to buy a property or own a property without actually buying it is to work with a joint venture partner. So in this case, your joint venture partner comes into the scene, they bring in the cash, they might even bring in the credit to qualify for financing, they purchase the property, but you're both owners on that property. Okay, so this is a beautiful way for you to control things without actually having to buy it yourself. So I'll give you an example. Back in the day, when I was doing what I call tenant first rent to own deals, we would find a really good qualified tenant buyer for a property, and then we would go looking for a house. We would look for a house that was in their price range and that they really liked. And then with a joint venture partner, we would buy that house for them and rent to own it to them for the next 2 or 3 years while we help them get qualified to finance and to purchase the price from us at the end. So how did this work for my joint venture partners? Well, my joint venture partner would actually bring up the money for the down payment, the closing costs, the property transfer taxes, all of that stuff. They would bring all of the money to the deal, and they would qualify for the financing. And in fact, they would be the owners on title. It would be their name on title as the owner of that property. And then the way I got involved in the deal is I would do a joint venture agreement with the investor, with the joint venture partner, and I would register my agreement with them on title. And that spelled out exactly how everything was going to work and how we were going to split the profits on this deal. Now, the beautiful thing is I never showed up anywhere on the mortgage documents. I never showed up anywhere on the property title of the property. All that showed up was my joint venture agreement. So it wouldn't affect my credit, wouldn't affect my ability to qualify for other mortgages moving ahead. So that was a way that I was able to go in and purchase properties or own properties, own an interest in properties without actually buying them myself. All right, so are you interested in finding investors and joint venture partners and doing these kind of deals where you don't actually have to come up with the cash yourself to buy the properties? Then I've got a great resource here for you. It's called my book. It's the Money Partner Formula, and I'll trade it to you for your name and your email address. That's right, it's absolutely free. Just click on the link in the description below, or you can go to investorattractionbook.com and get your free copy today. And this is going to walk you through my entire system, my entire process for you to be able to bring on joint venture partners and private investors, lickety split, and in fact, raise your first 6 figures in a matter of weeks and 7 figures in a matter of months. Get your copy today.